Come on, Demons. Come on, come on, come on, come on, Demons. I've got this feeling.
Well, good evening and welcome to an extremely special edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and joining me on this very special occasion is my co-host, Grapevine. Good evening, GV.
Good evening, Andy. It is a very special occasion indeed. I don't think anyone would have thought that we'd ever get to this day. So elusive has our guest tonight been over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly never expected it, and it was, I think it was even on this podcast earlier in the year that we sort of put it out there that we'd love to get our upcoming guest, and I don't think we. Well, I guess we can mention his name. It's not a secret. Allen Jakovich will be joining us shortly. But we have made it our goal to find him and get him. And when we did that, I didn't think that would ever be possible. And I know we've just completed 10 or so days of Trade Week in which we saw a little bit of action, and we'll discuss all of that next Wednesday night when the Demonland podcast returns to our regular scheduled programming. But tonight is all about the man I mentioned earlier. And don't ask how we managed to pull this off, but this could be the coup of the century.
And we don't know why either. He would have fielded hundreds of or dozens of requests over the years, in the 20 plus years since he retired, from media outlets far and wide. And as far as we can tell, this is the first proper interview that he's done in all that time. So there's a lot to get through. Even though his career was short. So looking forward to, not only reliving some of those magic moments, but perhaps also putting to bed or confirming some of the myths and legends which have long circulated about Jacko. Yeah,
and I'm sure we're going to be in for a great treat. And I don't know, should we just take a short break and get started? I don't think anyone wants to hear us rattle on.
No, they don't.
So
Let's get straight into it.
So we're just going to take a short break. You're going to hear a little clip of Jacko, of his playing days, and we're going to get straight into it. So without further ado, we'll be back in a moment.
Superbly done.
A forward in the first half, a defender now. To Lovett, just forward of centre wing. So Melbourne's miracle charge of 4 goals in 4 minutes has been halted. But this is a good mark by Dyson. Too far out to score. Jakovich led and then goes back to the goal square. Dyson goes as hard as he can. Bennett in good position now. Offhands. Jakovich! Oh, sensational!
Well, you couldn't describe that goal. You'd have to see a picture of it. That'd have to nearly go down as one of the goals of the year.
I can say that Dennis Stewart kicked a goal like that in a League Cup for Manchester City.
But watch this, Jakovich. Oh, excuse me, please.
Well, what a remarkable goal. Here's Clark out of the middle. Melbourne go forward again. Jakovich will lead back in the race. Open goal is beckoning. He goes off the ground and he's missed this time.
I think they should take him off, Dennis.
He got the scissor kick. He missed the penalty.
We're joined tonight by Demon royalty, certainly one of the most talented players to ever pull on the red and blue jumper. We usually do long introductions to our podcast guests, but tonight's guest needs no such intro. He's the one, the only, the mercurial Allen Jakovich. Alan, thanks for, I can't believe I'm saying this, I have to pinch myself, but thanks for joining us on the Demonland podcast.
Yeah, no worries, Jason. Happy to join you two fine demon men. I've done a little bit of research there, and I've listened to a couple of different pods here and there, and found it very entertaining, might I say.
Well,
Thank you very much.
We really appreciate it.
I don't know about the royalty, mate. Maybe a mad wild night. But I don't know
Well,
about
I guess
royalty.
I'm talking in the eyes of the supporters. You're certainly demon royalty, and we'll touch on that a bit in the interview. But on behalf of Andy and I and all the Melbourne listeners out there, thanks for coming on. It's great to have you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, mate. My pleasure, and hello to all the good demon folk out there. Still starving for a premiership, unfortunately, but hopefully there's one close just around the corner, eh?
Well, with all the droughts being broken at the moment, with the Bulldogs and Richmond of late, we're hoping we're next cab off the rank. So, we'll look forward.
Yeah, I think we've missed out there. I think the Bulldogs and Richmond particularly this year have sort of leapfrogged us a little bit, and it's a bit unfortunate, but I'm sure looking at the list there and some of the guys that we've got, and this young fella that we've just got over from Adelaide, I think
Jack Lever, yep.
Jack Lever, I think there's some really bright days ahead. Let's hope.
Yeah, let's hope. Well, we might ask you a bit later on about what you think of the current crop of Ds, but this is a night of reminiscing a little bit, so I might get started. Alan, you were the fastest player to reach 50 goals. You did that in 9 games, and equal fastest to 100 in 21 games, alongside the great John Coleman. How do you reflect on your career? It really must make you feel proud to have your name alongside one of the game's greatest goal kickers.
It's just, I suppose, another one of them famous sort of stats, if you like. But when I look at it, I don't think it's a. If I was 18 or 19 years of age at that time, and that happened when I was at that age, I would say it was a real great feat. But being 23 years of age, I think I was 22 or 23 at that time. I'd had a fair bit of senior football under my belt with Woodville in the SANFL, and also a bit of a stint up in Darwin.
Yeah.
So I was pretty primed and sort of ready to go. And then I suppose what unfolded in that season sort of probably fueled me to really, get cracking, if you like. And it was a bit of a purple patch there, if you like. And that was fueled by a lot of different emotions, and just basically a want there to sort of succeed, and
Did you come in thinking to the VFL that you would succeed? Because you did have that experience under your belt, as you say. But just to take the listeners through it, you made your debut in round 1 of 91 against West Coast, but it wasn't until you were called to the senior side in round 14 that you hit your straps, and you hit them hard. You kicked 3 against Hawthorn that day, and then bags of 8, 6, 6, 8, 7, 11, 5, 8 and 6 in 9 of the next 11 games. You talk about the purple patch. Did you come in thinking you'd be able to do something like that, or did you just surprise yourself with the success?
No, I did think I could do it. And I think a good grounding for that was probably a game up in Darwin with representing the NTFL against Essendon up in Darwin. A great Kevin Sheedy initiative, where he took sort of football around the country. I mean, he was a real pioneer as far as that was concerned. And I remember playing in a game there against Essendon, playing on Terry Danaher. I had to earn every kick. I kicked 8 on him that day, I think. But, Terry Danaher at that stage was probably into his early to mid-30s. I was 21, probably years of age there, sort of jumping out of my skin. And I can still remember sort of preparing for that game, thinking, wow, we're playing against Essendon here, and this is as closest to the big league as you can get, and some of the names that were in that side, which I ended up playing against, a year later when I went down to Melbourne. But I think that particular game, kicking 8, as I said, for the Northern Territory, really made me believe that, I can belong in this sort of company.
Yep.
And, when I look back and reminisce on that, I've only probably got Kevin Sheedy to thank there. And like I said, what a pioneer. And, he introduced all this sort of stuff. And, if there's any young player out there that is playing on the fringes, playing in the VFL or even a high standard amateur competition, I couldn't stress more how great it would be to go up to the NTFL, up to Darwin. For the listeners that don't know, their season sort of kicks off basically now. And it runs through to Christmas, and I think January, February, late February is their grand final. And that really put me in good stead. I really developed a lot of speed up there. I really enhanced my game as far as my explosiveness, if you like, when you've got these young blackfellas chasing you and they are lightning quick. You've got to really know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it. You've got to know what you're going to do with it, because they're going to be really hot on your tail really quick. And it's a beautiful brand of football. It's very skill orientated. You don't get the real big heavy clashes. It's real pure football. Not to the old.
It's an open game, isn't it, up there?
Very open and very quick, and really, if you haven't got the skills, you won't survive up there. You've got to be real quick with your hands and feet. And like I said, if you're left wanting and you don't know how to dispose of it, by the time you've thought about it, you're gone. They're just on you. And so that put me in real good stead. And, when you go back to that question, can I do this? I mean, there was a game up there against Port Adelaide, I think, before that Essendon game. It might have been just after. And I presented myself quite well and kicked goals in both of them games, and, really went away from that thinking, I can do this, so... And, and then coming down to Melbourne, that first game, I think we played a practice game, something like a Foster's Cup or something like that. And, we played one there against Brisbane at Carrara, and I played on the half-forward line and kicked half a dozen and was feeling pretty good. And then, unfortunately, that first game we had to travel to Perth, and it was a real stinking wet day in Perth, and I think we only kicked 2 goals for the whole game. I think I might have had 2 kicks that day, and one of them was in the arse. And I sort of didn't survive the selection table, and sort of got relegated to the reserves for the next 10 or so weeks. And I did feel that I should have been in that team. I think the team was going along quite all right. Darren Bennett was serviceable. And I still felt that, kicking 10s and 11s and 8s and consistently in the 2s, I felt like I should have been there earlier, and I think that might have really lit the fire, if you like.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask you about that. Why did it take so long? You kicked 60 goals in 10, 11 games. What do you think it was?
Well, I'm not too sure. I'm not too sure. I think the match committee or John Northey could better answer that question. And maybe there was a little bit like, let's light the fire in this bloke's, belly, or let's put the blowtorch to him and let him suffer in the reserves a bit and just see what sort of fire's burning in that belly. And I think, when I did get my chance after that, I think Darren was starting to struggle a little bit. And there was also, I think I could have come in a bit earlier, but I remember there was young Darren Cuthbertson, if you remember that name.
Yep. He kicked a couple of bags.
Yeah, he kicked a 7 or 8 there against Collingwood one week at Waverley. I remember it well because I sat in the stands, sort of shaking my head, thinking, well, could be another couple of weeks in the Magoos. And so I suppose a few different variables there, if you like. But certainly when I did get my chance, I sort of made sure that I let them know that in more ways than one. If you look at some of the replays, after I kicked a goal, there were some sort of signs that went back to the coach's box. And
so what that fist up that you used to do was that fist that you used to do, the punching of the fist up?
Yeah, a bit of that. A couple of fingers might have been sort of been protruding through that fist, if you like, or whatnot. But it was a bit of me against the rest of the world, if you like. I'd also lost my father a couple of years before that, and he was instrumental in my life, and it's hard to deal with that sort of loss. And, when it did get me down, there was a couple of times there where, I don't know, you probably see on a few replays, I was probably the only bloke that wore a black armband on one particular week. But if I was feeling a bit down or something and thinking about my dad, I just used to put that black armband on me arm. And, if anybody asked it, I used to say, well, it's just a bloke I knew in Darwin or a bloke I knew in South Australia or something passed away, and didn't sort of elaborate on it too much. But it was just a time where I was missing the old man, and that just sort of helped me bring him along with me. And that's what I.
So you were actually still very young when you lost your father. Obviously.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was just before I turned 20 or so, something around about there. So, unfortunately, Dad passed away pretty quickly after a short illness, and unfortunately, didn't get to see my brother Glenn and myself play at the big dance there, if you like, and it's something that we sort of carried with us. And what can you say? That's life,
Yeah, well, let's go through some of those games in a bit of depth. I was watching today, and I've put up onto the Demonland Facebook page your game against North Melbourne. That famous 11, I think you kicked 11, you kicked like 9 behinds, 1 out on the full. And that game is a favourite of everyone's. Tell us a bit about that famous scissor kick goal that you kicked that day. What was going through your head when that ball was coming in?
Well, I think that was just a bit instinctive, that particular thing. I mean, if you sort of blink, you miss it, and the ball sort of went over the back of the pack, and the way I read it, I sort of went beyond it as well, and then all of a sudden it just popped out there, and And then, I did a few of them in the backyard with a soccer ball. I don't think I ever attempted to do it with a football.
Is that from a soccer background? Is that where that
I think
came?
so. Yeah, I think so. We played a lot of soccer in the backyard when we were kids. And, the old man wasn't really keen on us being sort of that European background. He wanted us to play soccer, but, when all your mates at school are playing footy, and, that's how you first sort of get introduced to sports like this. It's your mates, it's playing with your mates. And, so that soccer sort of thing didn't last too long, although I still love me soccer, and I played a little bit for Adelaide, Croatia, probably in a second division, I think, when I was playing in Adelaide. And you can do those sort of things when you're young, sort of play footy on a Saturday and go and play soccer on a Sunday. Yeah. But probably not at the highest level. I don't think an AFL club would let you do stuff like that today, or they wouldn't let you now, though. But yeah, that was one of them days where, just jumping out of the ground. I remember playing on
Mickey Martin
that day. That's right. He sort of came out with the thump and got all aggressive and told me he was going to punch me in the back of the head if I go anywhere near the ball and this sort of stuff. And I didn't say too much. I never used to say too much until you actually let your goal kicking do the talking. And once I was up and about and kicked a couple, then I sort of let Mickey know that day that, look, mate, don't worry about punching me in the back of the head. I'm going to make you look like a clown today. So, and the more I kicked, the quieter poor old Mickey got. And it was quite funny because I started to rev him up there after I had about 4 or 5. Every time I saw the North Melbourne runner sort of running towards or running onto the field to give directions like runners do, I kept reminding Mickey that he was coming to get him very shortly. And to lift your head, Mickey. I was saying, lift your head, Mickey. He's coming to get you. He's coming to get you.
I think you had a few opponents that day.
The runner finally did come out to move him, and I gave him a few pleasantries and made sure that I said goodbye to him. And unfortunately, I got a great respect for Mick Martin. I watched him play some great games. Geez, he had his work cut out with some of the quality forwards that he played on, the Pluggers and the Locketts, the Ablets, the Dunstalls. And, unfortunately, I never got to play against Mick again. I never gave him another through injury and whatnot, maybe suspension here or there. Never got to play on him again, and I ran into him in a pub once, and I sort of promised him I'd give him another shot. But it wasn't to be. We had a beer and we had a bit of a laugh, but he had an incredible career. He was a great player for North Melbourne, I think.
You kicked the first 6 Melbourne goals that day. As Andy said, finished with 11-9 and 1 or 2 out in the full. But you also got reported for abusing an umpire. It was a pretty eventful afternoon.
It was an eventful afternoon, mate. It was, and I suppose that sort of precedes me. I think that sort of stuff it wouldn't have been me unless I got reported after that. I'm not too sure what happened there. I was just in front of the members there, and they were being pretty vocal. I remember that day. And I don't know who the guy was, but he had a free kick. I don't think I gave a free kick away, but I ended up on the mark.
I watched it today. You didn't give it was no way it was a free kick. You let the umpire know it. He gave you. You kept letting him know it. You got 50.
But it wasn't that. It wasn't the free kick. I mean, you don't want to. And especially when you're jumping out of the ground like that, you've got a bag to your name already. Yeah. You don't want to give away it's the 50-metre penalty. Now, when I stood on the mark, and stood there like you do when you're standing on the mark, I couldn't hear the umpire's call. I think I encroached on the mark by about a metre or so. he was blowing his whistle to call me back, to come back a few steps when you see it on the replay. But I couldn't hear because of the members. They were making quite a racket there, obviously voicing their displeasure about the free kick. And instead of coming over to me or getting my attention, he, then I did hear the whistle, and next thing he's sort of waved his arm and given away a 50-metre penalty. And, you're having a good day and you don't want to sort of get cussed by an undisciplined sort of act. And I just ran. I just made a beeline for him, and I called him every expletive under the sun, I think. But he gave it straight back to me.
Yeah, looked like it.
He gave as good as he got, but then he sort of pulled the policeman/umpire badge out and sort of said one more word and you're reported. And
you did.
Of course, I had to give him another word. So I think I said something bad about his mother.
Okay.
And then he said something bad about my mother. So, and then he ended up reporting me, and it was just a $750 fine at the tribunal, so it wasn't too bad. But that was you could say that was the hamburger with the lock, that sort of game. It was memorable and it was a lot of fun.
Do you know if you got votes in that game? Because in the replay I was watching, they were talking about perhaps you wouldn't be able to be eligible for votes because you got reported. Jimmy had a great game.
No, I think you got the votes.
No, I'm pretty sure I got 3 Brownlow votes that day. I'm pretty sure about that. I don't know. I think I might have got 11 or 12 votes that particular year. And I didn't get that many, so I can remember the ones I got, put it that way. So,
you also talked to the crowd over the fence that after. Well, it wasn't so much the crowd as your girlfriend. It was reported at the time.
Yeah.
Is that something you did most weeks?
No, mate. No, that's just another media.
A media beat up
there, I think. But look, they don't miss a thing. And look, because of my extensive travels, if you like, Darwin, Adelaide, originally coming from Perth, Port Hedland. I used to have a lot of friends that sort of used to be coming through, and I'd get them a couple of tickets, and I sort of knew where they were sitting, and if things were going good, like that particular day, you'd turn around and give them a bit of a thumbs up, or they're there cheering for you, having a great day, getting on the grog, while you're sweating your ass out. Doing it tough out there, so I used to give them a bit of a thumbs up or something like that. But as far as a girlfriend and blowing kisses and all this sort of rubbish, I mean that's something only a dickhead like Mike Sheehan could come up with, So
we might come back to that issue later too.
So you mentioned you played on Mickey Martin that day. Besides Mickey, you mentioned he was a great fullback. Who was your toughest opponent that you ever played on?
Yeah, look, I don't know about toughest really. I sort of, and don't take this the wrong way, but I sort of kicked goals on all of them, and I respected all of them. But I was hard to match up on.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put somebody, a smaller type, that had the pace that could keep up, well, then I'd use my strength and do a bit more hustle and bustling, And if they put your big man on me, someone like a Danny Frawley, for instance, I mean, he was great to play against because, he was just
you
slow.
could just run around him.
And, I don't know if he knew what was going on, but a couple of times I played on old Danny Frawley. Yeah, it was always a good time for a bag there, that's for sure. So, but look, you've got to respect all of them. Chris Langford, for someone of his size, he was very mobile, very quick. He had long arms. And just when you thought you had a break on him, this fist would come out of nowhere, sort of collect half the side of your head at the same time too. And he kept you honest. Stephen Silvani was a great player. He wasn't overly skilled. He was very awkward. There were legs and arms everywhere when Sauce was about. But, I mean, what a great player, what a great career. And, have you ever heard of a full back that a coach could just swap to full forward and he goes and kicks 10, And, I mean, he comes from good pedigree, like his old man. Was a pretty good player, they told me, in his day. And I think the young fella's going to be all right too when he sort of breaks out of his shell. I mean, he comes from good pedigree, obviously.
Yeah.
So Sauce was all right. But a couple of others as well. Mel Michael. Mel Michael was only young when I come across him, and I might have kicked a few on him, but geez, again, you could see that this bloke was going to have a great career. He just had pace, he had strength, he had a bit of mongrel in him, he had everything. And I really, here's a guy that went on and played, close to 300 games and played in a few premierships up there at Brisbane, was a great player. And also Mark Zanotti. Do you remember Mark Zanotti?
Yep.
Played with Fitzroy and Brisbane. I think he also had a stint with the Eagles there early days. Yeah, Mark Zanotti had it all too. He was strong. He had a few screws loose in his head, which I could sort of relate to. He was pretty good, old Zanotts, that's for sure.
So a few weeks later after that North game, we were playing an elimination final against Essendon. You had only kicked one goal in the first half and we were down by a few at half-time. But you turned it on after the last break. You kicked 7, including a celebratory long one after the siren. That kind of day wasn't unusual for you, was it, where you're quiet in the first part of the game and then you sort of let loose and wreak havoc in the second half? Yeah,
that was a funny game. That was it was really windy out at Waverley that day. Yep. I remember presenting myself, leading as well as I could, and there were a couple of times there where the delivery wasn't the best, but I mean, I didn't whinge about that because when the ball was on the ground, I didn't mind. I could scoop it up pretty quick and turn on either side pretty quickly and snap goals. But I just remember the ball just bouncing the wrong way a couple of times, and I was glad I got that goal just before half-time because I think that sort of helped just, I suppose as a forward, when you're sitting there and you've got nothing to show for half a game of footy, you're starting to think about the Pine bench, and being dragged. And, I mean, that's the last thing you want to do because once you're dragged, your day's sort of done. Your confidence is shot to bits. And, I remember sort of chalking that goal up and then sort of looking at Swooper in the eyes at half-time, and he sort of looked at me and put me on the spot, and he says, "Are you right? How are you travelling?" And I said to him, "I'm fine, mate. I'm feeling great. It's just the ball's bouncing the wrong way. There's shit happening out there that I just can't win a trick, Yeah. And, Swooper persisted with me there. And, I suppose you can't keep having that sort of bad luck for the whole game. And then a few things changed. And, it was a funny day. I don't know how to describe it. I've never told anyone this before, but, if you remember at the time, I remember waking up that day and preparing myself to go out to Waverley that day, and I took the wrong turn, and I was heading, instead of going down the Eastern Freeway, I was heading sort of towards Box Hill. And I remember sort of getting into the change rooms probably about 10 minutes before the team meeting, before we should have been there. And I remember John Northey and Gary Lyon looking at me as if to say, where the hell have you been, you know?
Yeah.
And so the day didn't start off too good, but I remember that morning, and I don't know if you boys would remember, but Jimmy Connors was making a bit of a run in the, I think it might have been the US Open, but I think the US Open's later on in the year. But I don't know, he'd you know, he was a bit of an old man at that stage, and I just remember him scoring these incredible shots and beating his opponent that day. I think it might have been the quarters or the semi-final of some sort of Grand Slam. I'm not too sure when it was. Now I'm trying to marry it up with what time of the year it is, because
it
we know
says
the US Open's late in the year. But I watched him sort of doing these finger sort of movements, that pumping his fingers, and it inspired me. I watched this bloke, and you know, I grew up watching Connors and McEnroe and this sort of stuff, and there was this great underdog. I think he might have been playing McEnroe that day, or Ivan Lendl or someone like that, and they made a big deal of it. And if you watch that last goal after the siren, there was a little bit of Jimmy Connors there, sort of with the fingers.
The celebration.
I don't know where it wasn't, you know, premeditated or anything like that. It just came out, you know. So it was a good day. It was always good to beat Sheedy's boys, that's for sure. And sent them packing. That was an elimination final, I think. So they went home and
you talked about being dragged just before. I do remember a game, it was in the following year or the year after at Victoria Park, where you were dragged in the first half, after a very quiet first half, but then you came back on and kicked a bag in the second, helping Melbourne to a close win.
Well, look, any game against Collingwood, mate, you just had to get up. You just had to. I mean, you know, it's a long week in football. You know, every second bastard that you run into is a Collingwood supporter, and in all walks of life, whether it's the media or they just seem to all barrack for Collingwood, you know. And it's a long week when you get beaten by Collingwood. There's a lot of rivalry there, as you know. But yeah, I remember the day very well. I think I kicked the first goal of the game, and I was up and about. And then Gary Pert sort of run off me, and I followed him to about the centre circle. That's as far as I'd ever go, I think. And look, they kicked it sideways, they kicked it backwards and sideways to find him. And then all of a sudden, Gary Pert's having a shot for goal, 35 out, directly in front. And I'm standing back at full forward by myself. And the energy when that runner ran out to me. I mean, the Collingwood folk were giving it to me really good after that, like reminding me that I might have kicked a goal, but your opponent's kicked one too. You're such and such, and they had some great expletives there that they used to come out with that really make you laugh. But watching that runner come towards me, the energy at that ground that day, and the build-up of the noise until they saw that runner's finger point towards me and say, "Come with me, you're off." And as soon as they saw that, they just screamed. And sitting on that bench wasn't a good feeling. Sitting in those old sheds, the amount of noise and the punching into that shed was just incredible. I'll never forget that. But again, it was me against the rest of the world, and I knew I had to go out there. And I distinctly remember after the game, good old Jimmy Steins and Gary Lyon pulling me aside, because I really wanted to wave to every one of them when I left that ground that day, especially after winning and kicking 9 or 10 or whatever I ended up with that day. I wanted to tell every one of them about it. But, I think cooler heads prevailed there with Gaz and Jim. Jimmy and sort of pulled me aside and said, "Look, mate, I've got long memories. Let it go. Let's go and have a shower and and call it a day." Eh? So as they were sort of dragging me off, I still sort of turned around and gave them a wave. And they were quite frightening that day, that's for sure. So,
it seemed
it was even tough having a shower because I could hear them outside waiting for me. And they didn't like that very much. And I think old Noel McMahon that day, I think thought it might be a good idea that I got a police escort out of there. So, there were a couple of policemen came in after I showered up and put me straight in the back of a divvy van. And I think they drove me around the block a few times until they subsided a bit and took me to my car. And then from there we went back to wherever the function was. So quite an eventful day, but always good to kick goals and especially beat Collingwood.
It's you were lucky you got to play in the time of those suburban fortresses. Unfortunately, that's disappeared from the modern game. All of that, we just play at the G and Etihad Stadium. It's all very clinical these days. You don't get the colourful stuff of suburban grounds.
Yeah, and beautiful grounds too. When you look at they're like a billiard table, a lot of them now. And I remember a lot of times playing at some of those suburban grounds. And although they were nostalgic, and I look back at them with fond memories because that was an end of an era, you could have said. But it was always hard when you're having a set shot for goal, sort of having to deviate around all the patches. And if I was predominantly I was a right footer for goal, even though sometimes I used to line up with me left depending on what the wind was doing and all sorts of things like that. But before I'd kick with my right foot, I had to make sure that my left foot landed on a nice patch of grass. So because if you sort of went through your run up and just as you're about to kick with your right foot and you land your left foot on that particular mark, if it was muddy, it would just slip under your feet, so all that ground would move. So you had to find that green patch of grass to land your foot on before you kicked. And that made it a lot more interesting, that's for sure. But yeah, when I sit down and watch a bit of a game at Etihad or even the G was always well presented. Although if they had concerts and things like that, there you had a bit of shifting soil, sort of, which sort of wasn't much fun. But incredibly, our Junction Oval where we used to train, and I don't know if the Vic cricket team still play there, but that was just I think the greatest curator that ever was a curator. Looked after that ground, and that was beautiful ground to train on. It was just a shame we didn't play on more grounds like the Junction Oval because, that's where Fred Fanning kicked his famous 18 that day. Yep. And what a beautiful ground to do it on. Yeah, absolutely, the old Junction Oval for sure.
Yeah, I used to love going down there at finals time. There was always great atmosphere, with hundreds of thousands of people flocking down there. It was very great days.
Watching the boys train and that?
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. So you finished 1991 with 71 goals from 14 games, another 60 in the Rezzies, giving you 131 in total for the year. That's just an amazing effort. I
suppose when you look back at it, it was a pretty big year. And I just got reminded not long ago how many points I kicked that year too. And I was a bit
We're going to bring that up.
I was a bit astounded with that conversion rate. I really was. But, I suppose I used to get the ball a lot and having that ability to sort of turn either way and being sort of deep into attack. It was probably like the last line. You didn't get many blokes running past you or creating much more space. So, you had to find your own space. And then once you got the ball, well, you had to sort of get rid of it pretty quick. And if you got one of those famous helicopter kicks from Todd Viney, great player, but didn't have the greatest kick in the world.
Nope.
But I didn't mind as long as it came in my direction. You'd pick it up and just try your best and have a snap. Try and put some sort of numbers on the board for sure.
You sort of preempted the next question in that a feature of your play was kicking large hauls of points alongside the large hauls of goals. The 11-9 against North, I think there was an afternoon against Hawthorn when you kicked 4 goals, 10. But if you were hard up against the boundary line, you were almost a certain bet to kick it. How do you sort of explain those fluctuations in accuracy?
Yeah, I can't explain that, mate. Go figure. No,
I suppose that's a $60 million question, isn't it?
But yeah, it is. It is. But I distinctly remember that game against Hawthorn, and it was really windy. It was always windy out at Waverley. It was a shocking place to play footy. Really, it was a nostalgic ground, and it felt right, but there was a lot of swirling sort of breeze, and it was hard to pick which way it was going. And I remember that day it was just terrible. Sometimes it was just like, oh, look, just kick straight for them and forget about what the wind's doing and try and allow for the wind, just, kick it, stab it hard. And, you'd kick different sort of trajectories, if you like. If you kick the ball high, clearing the post by a long way, or kicking it as high as the post, the ball could get lost. You'd lose that drop punt sort of spin on it, and then it could go either way. But sometimes you had to, even that game against Essendon, that was out at Waverley that day. There was a few there that you had to stab and sort of make sure that the ball travelled under the post or under the top of the post, if you know what I mean. Yeah. And that means it didn't sort of get lost, because the higher you went up, the more chance that it would just, catch the wind one way and just start cutting and deviating away, a bit like a poor golf shot, it would fade. It was a bit tricky. I would have loved to play that Eddie had under that roof.
Yeah.
I suppose you'd have no excuses with that sort of atmosphere, and I don't think there'd be much wind under that roof. So, but definitely kicked too many points, that's for sure.
Well, you had, in 91, you had 128 shots on goal in those 14 games. That's just incredible.
Yeah, I suppose when you look at it like that, that's a lot of chances. And, I did sort of look... I wasn't big on stats, I suppose, other than how many goals I had next to my name, which sort of dictated whether I played well or whether I didn't. Today's game's a bit different. You look at some of the forwards that really produce pressure. It's just phenomenal how hard they fight to keep it in. I don't think we were as desperate when we played. It was a different time, that's for sure.
Well, if you don't like stats, I don't think you'll mind this one. But that day you kicked 11-9 against North. You had 23 kicks, 15. I can't remember what it was, but the one stat that stood out was the handball stats, and that was a big.
I would have had about 11 that day.
That was a big fat zero of handballs.
Yes,
I've always said, Jace, you can't handball goals, So, but look, a lot's been said about that over the years and the lack of handballs. But I don't think I was a greedy player. No. If you look back at some of them, if there was a player sort of lurking out out the back of the square, and I was sort of beyond 50 or something. I've seen a few replays where I've actually passed the ball. I actually passed once to Rod Grinter there when I was on 9, so I don't think I've ever done that before. But I mean,
that is a selfless act, absolutely.
But you don't get too many full forwards that have got 9 under their belt, and then they sort of go and give their 10th off, or what could have been your 10th goal. But, no, look, if there was a player in a better position, you had to give it to him. And that's what you had to do, for sure. And bring other players into the game too, It's not a one-man sort of show. You do look at other players, and I remember Rod Grinter sort of being in and out of the reserves there, and I just remember that day and thinking, there he is by himself, I've got to give it to him. And he didn't let me down. He put it through, and I made sure I let him know that he owed me one. So if I did give it away, I was quick to go down and congratulate him. But I sort of said, "Hey, you got to give me one back." So,
an incident that still gets brought up to this day, and that was when you kissed Glenn on the ground. He said later he was going to deck you, but that your mum was watching that day. Is that true?
No.
And how did he react?
No. It was a special day. We did used to fly Mum out to every one of them Eagles games, and of course she was already in Perth when we used to play the Eagles over there.
Yep.
But she was proud as punch. Look, I think if you the Glenn that I played with in the backyard would appreciate that. Also, the Glenn in the backyard wouldn't have ever had a crack at me because he would have ended up on his back.
Right.
And that goes without saying. So I think that would have been in the back of his head too. But no, I think where there is a little bit, Glenn personally wouldn't have taken that to heart. But as far as Glenn, the West Coast Eagle team player, I think they didn't like that for the fact that they were the reigning premiers, and here we were sort of running over the top of them in the last quarter, running around kissing them. And I think that bit of pride, as far as the Eagles had, I think that might have been dented a little bit. So there might have been a reaction like that. But, only clowns like a Mike Sheen would bring that up and try and cause some problems there.
Did he do that, did he, with that situation?
Sorry?
Did he do that? Did Mike do that with that situation? Did he try to drive it as a wedge between you two? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I believe that. And, it's water off a duck's back as far as I'm concerned. We both look back at it with fond memories. And it was a special day. And Glenn, when we played the Eagles, when the Eagles came over, Glenn never flew back with the team. I think the Eagles used to fly back pretty much straight after the game on a Saturday afternoon. And they sort of used to get back into Perth at 10 o'clock at night or whatever, and that commenced their week from there, if you like. But Glenn used to stay an extra couple of days and not fly back till the Monday.
Yeah.
And of course, Mum been over there as well. And it was one of my better days. Beating, and none of that was. How could I say? Predetermined. You know what I mean? I never set out to do that. It was just a spur of the moment thing. If you like. I couldn't tell you what Glenn was doing on the mark or what he was saying, but if you ever watch that movie, The Exorcist, when that young girl's possessed on the bed,
yep,
and she's saying all sorts of things to the priest that's trying to exorcise her, if you like, Well, yeah, I frightened the hell out of Glenn when he was younger with that movie. I think I introduced him to that movie, and he had to sleep for at least 3 months with the light on. And anyway, it used to be a bit of a running gag. We grew up as Catholics, not really staunch, but sort of from our background, and I think we saw the funny side in what that little girl had to say to the priest that day. And I think my first shot there, we were 3 points behind. Glenn was standing on the mark, saying all these things, like from The Exorcist. And then I missed. I kicked a point, and I think that brought us back to 3 points behind. It was about the 20-odd minute mark of the last quarter. Might have been the 23-minute mark of the last quarter. I remember Johnny Worsfold kicking the ball out. It might have been Guy McKenna. One of the two went to kick it over my head and sort of stabbed at it a bit, and before I knew it, the ball was back in my hands in that exact same spot. And Glenn had peeled off, I think, to chase. Might have been Earl Spalding, I think, that was running off or chasing him. And then as soon as he'd seen the ball back in my hands, Glenn ran back and took over the mark. I think it might have been Guy McKenna was standing on the mark, and Glenn said, no, you stand aside, let me stand on the mark. And then he started with The Exorcist again. and yelling out these expletives. And if you closely look on the replay, you can see Jimmy Steins with his hands on his hips, and he was really looking at what Glenn was saying and just shaking his head. He walks away shaking his head. And anyway, I don't know how that ball found the middle of my boot, and consequently went through the middle of the goals, and that sort of drew us in front. We were 3 points up then. I think I got another free kick straight after that. The ball came straight back down. I think the umpire played it on. I think Andy Lovell or someone like that ran into an open goal, and that was the last score of the game. But yeah, after kicking that goal, I think it was something that was, that was the word I was looking for before, premeditated. It wasn't premeditated. It was just a spur of the moment thing. And I think I said something else like what the priest might have said to the young girl in that movie, and planted one, and that was it. But the funniest thing about that was after the game, I remember doing a bit of media and press after that straight away, and there was this radio station and that radio station and whatnot, and it held me up a bit. And Jimmy Steins, being the consummate professional that he was, used to have ice baths and hot showers, and then back in the ice bath and doing all sorts of it. This is the way this guy used to go about his footy. Yeah. And I remember him walking up to me and just in that rich Irish accent just saying, "What the hell was your brother saying to you, mate? What the hell was that shit? What sort of family are you?" I couldn't breathe. I think a little bit of wee might have came out in my towel, and I was hunched over, and I couldn't even look at him. I couldn't speak to him, and I couldn't even breathe. I was laughing that hard. But Jimmy was pretty serious, and he started reciting some of that Exorcist, if you like, and saying, "What is this all about? How did your parents raise you?" And saying this sort of stuff. So it was quite funny, and and it all ended in tears, if you like, because I remember getting through the hustle and bustle there at the G, and making sure I went over and linked up with Glenn. I got him; he was ready. We found Mum, and off we went through the crowd. And I was living over in Williamstown at that time, and I remember driving through the city, And Mum was sitting in the front seat next to me. I was driving. Glenn was in the back seat. And we laughed. We laughed all the way until things went pretty quiet. And, I mean, I was concentrating on the traffic and obviously had me attention diverted to that. And I sort of thought it's a bit quiet. And I looked up and there was Mum just sort of bawling her eyes out quietly, you know. And I think, you know, we all thought about Dad at that time. And, I looked in the rearview mirror and there was Glenn bawling his eyes out, you know. So not another word was said for that last 3 or 4 kilometres. We all had tears sort of rolling down our face. And, what a great day. And that's how that day finished for us. So we went back to my house and continued to have a bit of a laugh about the day, and we didn't say too much as far as what the tears were all about. But we all knew it was for Dad, and it was just one of those things.
Thanks.
You must be able to empathise then with Jesse Hogan, who lost his father during the year. Also a West Australian boy living on the other side of the country. I suppose you could relate to that situation that he's faced this year.
Absolutely. And then to get that double whammy, the poor bugger, and be diagnosed with that testicular cancer. But I've got a very good friend of mine over here in New South Wales that's been through the same sort of thing, and I think they get it early, and which, not knowing too much about it, but what I've read, that I think he'll fully recover. I mean, he played not long after that, and I suppose there's good doctors and medicine around here, around these days, and I'm sure they'll keep an eye on that. And, I feel for young Jess. I hope that, he just runs out there and remembers his old man every time he does, and that'll help. It's sort of cathartic, and mine was wearing a black armband, just like I said before, just randomly sometimes. And like I said, I had to fib about it and say it was an old mate in Darwin or a mate in South Australia, or, but it wasn't. It was for me dad, and that helped me. That was cathartic. That helped me get through that,
Yeah, well,
So, I just hope that Jesse has got a lot of support there. I think he's, even if he's got to jump on a plane every now and then, I don't know if his mum's still in the picture or anything like that, but I found that helped too. When I could, I'd get back to Perth and just, surprise mum, sometimes not tell her. And just rock in through the door and spend the weekend. And I think your family is the best thing that you need at times like that. I think that's the most important. So I hope Jesse doesn't end up going back there permanently, like I've heard a few stories. And I hope Melbourne can retain him for a long time, because he's going to be pivotal to their success in years to come, I hope. So, I just hope he's got that good support around him and he can get through all that.
Yes, we do too. Thanks for that story about the whole story with Glenn and The Exorcist. It certainly adds a new dimension to that chapter, and I'm going to have to go and rewatch that game and The Exorcist this weekend just to see it all. I'm pretty sure you could lip sync it if you really have a look at Glenn and what he's saying on the mark. And then pop in the old Exorcist DVD, and you'll match them up. Hopefully, the crappy quality YouTube videos allow me to see the movement of the lips. Some of those old tapes aren't the best to watch.
The funniest thing out of that, Jace, is watching Jimmy Steins' reaction. That's the funniest, because he starts shaking his head and walking away, and he just can't believe what he's hearing. And then to confront him in them change rooms after that game, like I said, I couldn't talk, and I could say that a little bit of wee come through the towel, that's for sure.
So, Alan, you struggled with injury during your short career. You had groin surgery fairly early on, and then the well-known issues with your back. Do you ever think about what might have been, if not for the injuries? And is that what ultimately forced you out of the game?
Yeah, absolutely. But, you can't... You've got to get on with life. You can't... the old saying, you can't cry over spilt milk and think, poor me, and look at me. I mean, you only have to look at someone like... everybody gets injuries. Some are more serious than others. No one went through it more than a young David Schwartz.
Yep.
That was tragic what happened to him because, I played against Wayne Carey and I played pretty close and was pretty close with young David at that time, and just seeing what he could do and the way he could jump on people's heads, and he had that little bit of Carl Dietrich about him, if you like. Where he took no prisoners. He really didn't. And, it was a testament to him. I couldn't believe that guy virtually went on to, nearly captain the club, if you like. He sort of was a bit of a co-leader there with David Neitz. And to go on and play 250-plus games, unfortunately played in the losing grand final. It was never the same again.
No, never.
But testament to him how he came back. I mean, I never had serious knee injuries or anything like that. I know a lot of it's mental in your head, thinking, is it going to pop again? Is it going to go again? But yeah, with mine in the back, I had a protruding disc, which led to an operation. Which also led to a few other bulges that were pressing against some vital nerves there in the back. And very frustrating. I mean, when you think you're up and about and you're going all right, you're over it, you're sitting there or you bend over to do your boots up before training and bang, it pops again. And, you get up and all of a sudden you feel like a 95-year-old man. There was a famous time there out at the Whitten Oval where, I had my bag on the back seat. I grabbed my bag. I turned, I grabbed my bag. I noticed my back passenger door was unlocked, so I sort of leant over to sort of pop the button, if you like, and then just bang, I got out of the car, and it took me about 35 minutes to walk 300 metres to the change rooms. I walked into the change rooms. When they looked at me, they couldn't believe what they were saying, but I just about needed assistance, sort of, and that's how the back goes, unfortunately. When I look back, I wish I had have worked harder to strengthen my core, and for that fact worked harder when I was injured. But I used to get down on myself a bit, probably, and didn't work as hard to get back. I think when I trained hard, contrary to what some people might think or want to say, or it's a better story to say that I wasn't a great trainer, but that's not true. If I was feeling great, you had to train. And I was fortunate enough to be coached by Russell Ebert in South Australia, probably one of the best centremen I've ever seen. If any of the fans out there, get hold of YouTube and type in Russell Ebert and see some of the games he played in the 70s and the 80s there for Port Adelaide. Just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And he taught me some good things. I remember him once sort of looking at me boots saying, why is that one laced up different to that one? They've both got to be the same. You train, you play how you train. And he sort of taught me a little game, being that try and when you go out to train, there's not much pressure on. You haven't got pressure like in a game, if you like. and you work on your skills and you run and do all these different sort of drills. And he sort of used to say to me, try and get through the whole session without making one mistake. And I don't think I ever did it. It's a pretty hard thing to do. Because you're catching the ball and kicking the ball probably 50, 60 times more than you would in a game. So it helped you sort of concentrate and try and train as well as you could. I think a pre-season is the most important thing in a footballer's life. Coming down from Darwin, I was pretty fit, but that first pre-season in early 91 was the hardest I've ever had to train in my life, and that paid dividends. Later on in the year there when I was jumping out of the ground, that's all. I put all that down to a good pre-season. And then after that when I had the issues with the groin and also the back, I had interrupted pre-seasons. I could have come back from some breaks in better shape than I did. But yeah, what can you say?
You mentioned playing alongside David Schwartz. In addition to, and particularly the Schwartz of 1994, you played alongside Gary Lyon, David Neitz, Sean Charles. Did that team underachieve, or did injury to you and to the others cruel our chances of winning a flag during that period, do you think?
Yeah, I think a bit of both, mate. I think we did underachieve. Gary had a few injuries there. I think Nita was the only one that was sort of pretty injury-free out of all that lot.
And Steins.
Sorry?
And Jimmy Steins had a pretty good run with not getting injuries as well.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know, Jimmy used to do some strange things as far as his recovery and all that was concerned, but he sort of found his own niche there. There were a couple of times I think Jimmy shouldn't have played. His ankle was swollen like a balloon, and I remember we had Doyley in the reserves, and I think if I could be a little bit honest and critical, Jimmy could have forgotten about that consecutive games record and maybe stepped down a couple of times there. But, you can't question the man's endeavour and his application, his preparation was just something to behold. It really was. And how can you deny someone that wants to play that bad, So, and I think that might have been later. I think that might have been in 92 or whatever, but 91, that's the year he won the Brownlow medal, and it's probably the greatest story ever in the history of our game, these days you can't be a 17, 18-year-old kid, I think, and even back in our day, and Jim was the only exception, might I add, but you can't just decide you want to play AFL footy and then go and make a career out of it. This is something you've got to do at a very young age, and it's got to be burning inside you. You've got to have that want and that love for the game to play. And, for a guy to come over here at, 18, 19 years of age, never really kicked an AFL footy before, and, to play a year like he did, and I remember that year really well, and some of the work he used to do on the half-back line, just dropping a kick behind the play, and some of the marks just constantly presenting himself, constantly, saving us in that second last line of defence, if you like. And there were many games where I looked and I thought, geez, if we didn't have Steinsy, either we would have lost if we won, and if we did lose, we probably would have lost by, 10 or 15 goals as opposed to losing by 2 or 3 because of Jimmy's work. Just tireless. And, but a little bit before his time. I mean, Jimmy would have been really suited to the game today, I think, because you need that endurance. And I think, when you look at some of the guys he come up against, let's say a Monkhurst at Collingwood or something like that, even though he was a giant of a man and slapped me around a couple of times, might I add. But, you never saw him, or for that fact, even a Paul Salmon, if you like, changing in the ruck, playing for Essendon there. You never saw them put in as many, miles as Jimmy did. But he had that athletic, that middle distance sort of grounding behind him, if you like, which put him in real good stead for our game. His skills were at times a little bit wanting, but look, he made up with that. He made up for that. He could get away with that. And like I said, you'll never see a kid do that again. And I don't care where you come from, whether you grew up in Australia or you come from Europe or America. There's very few that can sort of come and play at this level, that's for sure, without that solid grounding that you get, which starts when you're basically 6 or 8 years of age, if you like,
Yeah, yep.
And in terms of our chances of winning a flag during that period, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think that the infamous day when I kissed my brother or something in '93. I think the Eagles probably were the best side of the year, but the worst side in the finals. Yeah. And they got knocked out, and I think Essendon might have won that year. And, they obviously won 92 and 94. And I really do believe that we had a team that could match them on any given day. When you look at the Vineys, who was just one of the toughest blokes I've ever seen, and mentally tough too. He wasn't all bravado and bullshit. He just was hard at the ball and tough. And Andrew Obst, I think one of the most underrated footballers. But playing next to him, they reckon Michael Aish was a great footballer, another South Australian. I think his son gets around playing these days too.
Yep.
But I'd put him in the same category as an Aish, if you like. He was just so clinical, so clean. Didn't worry about any BS. It was just get the ball, and he had some silky skills. And I'd prefer leading to Obba in front of Viney any day. But anyone could probably tell you that. But and looking back at what might have been, I would have loved to play at full forward and the Wiz playing next to me. Yeah, I think the Wiz turned up just after me. But could you imagine myself, the Wiz, maybe a David Neitz, and then across the half forward line you've got Schwarter at centre half forward, Andrew Obst on one flank, Gary Lyon on the other flank, and Gary was a great utility. He could play centre half back. I think he was a bit small and not strong enough to hold down centre half forward. I think he sort of struggled a bit there, although he had great skills and he led well. I think he lacked a little bit of strength there, but yeah, I mean, imagine having a fully fit David Schwartz at centre half forward and Gary and Obba on either side. I mean that forward line would come up against. Well, you look at the Sumiches and the Brett Heddies and some of these great players for the West Coast Eagles. I mean, if we were all 25 years of age again and we were to play this weekend, I'd still think we'd be a good chance to beat them,
Yeah,
And if that was a measuring
Farmer
stick,
alongside Jakovich is the stuff of dreams, that's for sure.
oh, yeah, I would have loved to play next to the Wiz. I think I ran into him in a nightclub in Perth not long after he left Melbourne, and I don't know what we said to each other. It was probably about 4 o'clock in the morning. But we had a laugh and a bit of a hug and a bit of a joke, and it's probably the only time I've seen him. But Jesus, some of the highlights I saw of him standing on blokes' heads. Wow, could he play? Jeez, just a freak of a small forward. You know, if there's another guy that you'd love to see playing today in today's football, I think he'd tear it up for sure. You know.
Well, he's got a young son who's 15 or 16, I think, who, by all accounts, has got some of the old man's tricks. So we might get to see it again someday.
Well, I haven't heard that before, but I'll be keeping a keen eye out for that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So,
absolutely.
Alan, you played under 2 coaches at the D's, John Northey and Neil Baum, and then Terry Wallace at the Bulldogs. Can you tell us a bit about the different styles and how you responded to those particular styles and personalities?
Yeah, look, Sweeper Northey was an incredible coach. I think another bloke that sort of left the scene a bit early. I know he sort of went on to Richmond after that, and then he sort of wasn't seen after that. But I'd put him in the same mould as a Malthouse, you know. Just don't leave any stones unturned. His preparation, I've never seen a coach. I haven't played under that many, but I don't think there were many coaches around that prepared like John Northey used to go home and write everyone a letter on what he thought, and he'd come to training Monday at the latest, even Sunday for recovery, and there'd be a letter in your locker with some highlights and points, some mostly positive sort of stuff, but he'd tell you if you played like a horse's ass, And I don't know, where you look at Barmy. Barmy's a pretty casual, sort of happy-go-lucky sort of guy. I think when he first turned up at the club, I remember Rod Grinder sort of saying to me, I hope he grabs some of these young players and backs them against the locker. And I think we're all expecting that from Barmy. I think if anybody sees the, was it the 70 grand final? Richmond and Carlton.
Yeah, he used to knock a few players.
72.
Yeah, when he was belting people left, right and centre. But he definitely didn't coach like that, that's for sure. He's quite, calm for a big bloke. He's very calm. And I remember once saying when he did take over, and I thought I was pretty grown up then and mature, and, I didn't need a ranting John Northey, if you like, but I think I got that wrong. I think when I look back, I think I needed a John Northey to, boot me in the arse and, let some spit fly out of his mouth when he's talking to you. And you really did he did really command your attention when he talked to you, that's for sure. And he told you, and you see it pretty close to your face. So, two completely different sort of people with them too. Terry Wallace I didn't have too much to do with. He was probably your new age coach, but a lovely bloke and knew a bit about footy. He knew how to play. And, I suppose he should have won a premiership there with the Bulldogs. Maybe that year that Adelaide sort of steamrolled him that year in the finals. I learned a lot from all of them. And Russell Ebert, of course, he was a great player, and I think he was always, just because you're a great player doesn't mean that transfers into your coaching. And I think he was under a lot of pressure because he was such a great player, Russell Ebert. But I don't know, he sort of rang my bell. I don't know. I think we, I don't know. I think we both knew what the game was about, skill-wise, and what to do, and he certainly knew a lot about kicking goals and how to line up, and he was just complete. He was an absolute complete. So I would have liked to been coached a bit more, probably by all of them, if you like. There was good parts in all of them, that's for sure. But Swooper Northey was special. He was a special coach, that's for sure. Looking back on it now, I think you could put him in the same sort of bracket as a knowing Glenn and hearing a lot of other players talk about John Northey. Mick Malthouse. I think he was a great coach, even though I only got coached with him one state game. But state games are a bit different. They're not week in, week out. But, I think he was pretty special and right up there with the Sheedies, I think, if you like,
I think Melbourne supporters would agree with you. Darren Bennett was capable of kicking a bag on his day, but if I remember correctly, you two sort of struggled to play well together if you're in the same team, and you didn't often play in the same team. Is that a fair assessment? Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, well, I don't really agree with it because I think there was a day at Sydney where we both kicked a bit of a bag each. I think we might have kicked 13 between us.
Yep.
I think I kicked 7 or 8 and Billy might have kicked 5 or 6, and I gave him a couple that day too. I remember that clearly. But and that was a small ground, it's well known that Sydney's a small sort of ground. So, you'd think that we wouldn't fit there. But I don't know. Billy started to struggle a little bit. I mean, he was probably the greatest kick that I've ever seen of a football. Him and surprisingly too, you'd probably be surprised with this one too, but Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson was one of the greatest kicks I've ever seen. And if you look at his conversion rate, I think he kicked about 300 or so. But you didn't really see Mark Jackson kick for all his antics and all that sort of stuff. Forget about that. But if you look at his stats and his conversion rate, if he had 5 kicks, more often than not, he'd kick 5 goals straight. He had a beautiful kick and really knew how to cut the ball and do. And, I'm surprised someone like him isn't at different clubs. If I was a coach, I could never imagine being a coach, but if I did have something to do in a coaching department at a footy club, I'd be tearing down walls to get that bloke in to teach blokes how to kick, because that bloke knew how to kick like nothing on earth. And Darren Bennett's leg was just, if you look some of the photos, some of the still shots of Darren Bennett, you've never seen him
they're incredible
and be so balanced, and used to get that leg up real high. And I mean, he got everything out of that leg. As we all know, he went on to have quite a great NFL career as a punter, a punt kicker, and that's where he really did belong at the end of the day. Before I got there watching Billy, I mean, he used to, comfortably kick the ball outside 50, 60, 65, 70 metres, and just go back like he was kicking it from 35, 40, But when I came along, I don't know, I think his confidence might have been a bit down, but watching him up close, it was like he had a beautiful golf swing and then all of a sudden it disappeared. And, he was shanking it all over the place there a bit. But, whatever he
was
lost,
a confidence player, wasn't he?
The end, and whatever he lost in his kicking towards the end of his AFL career, he definitely found it with that funny NFL ball, because, I think he broke some ground there. I don't think any of them Yanks have ever seen a leg like that before. You probably never see one again. Anthony Rocker was another great kick, another big kick. Also went over into the NFL. But, getting back to the original question, I think, there were a couple of times there where we combined it well. There were a couple of times there, one might have been injured or the other one, or, and like you said, he was a bit down on confidence there in the early 90s, but he made up for it, that's for sure.
Yep.
Yes. I was, while we're doing some research just for this interview, saw a story on the nets about you getting your hands on some Puma gear from the sponsors, unbeknownst to anyone. And the story is that you took that stuff to kids in a hospital. Is that story true? Can you shed some light on that?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bit of a funny one. John Forbes, the late John Forbes, a beautiful man he was that used to run Puna. I had a bit to do with him up in Darwin, and he always said he'd look after me when I came to Melbourne, and which he in turn did. And we signed a little bit of a contract where I got about 10 grand's worth of gear every year, which I couldn't believe I could get that much. And, I'm not sort of materialistic, if you like. I looked at it and I thought, well, there's no way that I could go through that much clothes in 1 year. And I remember him distinctly saying, look, what you don't use, that doesn't run into the next year. So next year it starts again at 10,000. So you can't sort of take your credits over to the next year, if you like. So, yeah, look, I used to sit there and go, well, look, I'm not going to, I'll be flat out going through 2 tracksuits and a couple of pairs of shorts and a couple of pairs of runners and half a dozen pairs of socks. That'll probably do me, and that probably came to about $900 or $1,000. And, at that time you used to get a lot of mail to go and see young kids in hospital, which you could never say no to. And, young kids, very sick young kids that would die, and sometimes you'd turn up to visit them and they weren't there. And that used to be a bit tough. But by the same token, whatever little niggle I had, or if I was feeling down because I got dropped or I was overcoming an injury, that sort of paled into insignificance, if you like. When you saw these young kids, and your heart used to bleed for them, and I'd come to see one, and then there'd be, the whole room would be full of kids coming from everywhere, and I used to feel a bit bad because I only bought one footy or one T-shirt with me to see this one particular kid, and seeing all them other ones, I thought to myself one day, well, I'm going to go back to Puma and I'm going to fill that boot up and take them all a shirt. And I think they woke up to it when the girl in the warehouse sort of said, yeah, look, he's taken the whole lot, and he's taken all different sizes, small sizes and medium sizes, and I think they might have thought that I was sort of flogging them down the market or something like that. And I think they might have even had someone follow me one day, and as the story goes, I think Forbesy told me once that they fired me straight to the hospital that one day once they saw me sort of grabbing a big handful out of the boot and going back into that children's ward. I think they sort of went, oh, okay, he's not selling them at the market, and but yeah, why not?
Allen, it's been more than 2 decades since you finished up, but on the Melbourne Footy Forum that we run, Demonland, every now and again, invariably, a new thread pops up asking, where's Allen Jakovich? Are you aware of just how popular you are still with the Demon Faithful? I mean, you're sort of revered as a god. You probably don't want to hear that, but maybe it's because you've been off the scene for so long, but people love what you did, how you played. Were you sort of aware of all of that in the last decade?
Well, you do get reminded of it. Not that I'm very active on social media. I sort of don't know too much about that, but I will get reminded every now and then from a friend that might have seen something or heard something or something like that. And, when I finished playing footy, I gave up a lot to play footy, a lot of your life and a lot of your time. And then, I didn't mope around too much when it was over because there were other things in life that I wanted to pursue, like me love for fishing and the outdoors and stuff like that, stuff that you can't really pursue, especially in the winter months when you're playing footy. And for that fact, not much in the summer either, because you were you'd only have a few weeks off, and then you bang into the pre-season in November. Off I went and got on with my life, and basically kept a pretty low profile. I'm pretty quiet, if you like. I've got a beautiful wife and a couple of kids now, and they consume a lot of my time. I'm pretty much a family man, if you like. And, just enjoying it, watching them grow, and, getting on with my life.
I can already hear thousands of listeners wondering the question, is there a father-son prospect in the works, or as we're now allowed to dream and believe too, a father-daughter prospect perhaps? Yeah,
there could be a father-daughter one there. There's not a son one there. But no, I've got my youngest is quite incredibly gifted academically, and it must come from her mum. But definitely not for me, because I didn't pick up many books when I was young. But she's constantly got a book in her hand, and she's really excelling at school. And they're not really that much into sports, so I suppose that's a problem with a lot of kids these days. They are sort of consumed with all these gadgets and things like that. But even though my wife keeps a pretty close eye on that sort of stuff and makes sure that they get outdoors, they're not really into any ball sports or netball or anything like that, really. So you can only back them and sort of embrace what they embrace and what they love. And I'd love to see one of them playing in the WAFL for sure. It would be something special to see, but I don't think so at this stage, mate.
As Andy mentioned before, and you said you've sort of been out of the spotlight since your retirement. The interest in you hasn't subsided. There's been all kinds of apocryphal stories of you running fishing charters, working on an oil rig, working in the mines. Can you confirm any of those stories, and can you share with us
that's all true.
What you're doing these days?
Yeah, they're still doing the same thing, mate. It's still seasonal. Up and down the East Coast, we run a bit of a charter company in season, and then out of season, we sort of do a bit of work with BHP and shutdowns and things like that on oil rigs when they shut them down, and sort of involved with a bit of OH&S and gathering permits and all that sort of stuff. I did a fair bit of rigging before that, and sort of found an easier option running around sort of chasing permits and things that are all OH&S compliant these days. And that sort of keeps me busy in the off season, and then in the fishing season it's pretty all systems go. Even when we're not doing that, we're not chasing fish, we're transporting boats, things like that. So I utilise some of my licences there to move boats around up and down the coast. And things like that. So that keeps me pretty busy, and that's about it.
Do you still watch the game and follow what's going on? And more importantly, are you still a demon?
Oh, absolutely, through and through. Once a demon, I think always a demon. That's for sure. And unfortunately, on the north coast of New South Wales, I probably only get to see Melbourne 2 or 3 times a year, which isn't enough. I'm just starting to get a little bit more savvy with the digital world, and you've got phones now that can sort of play your games. So I'm looking forward to seeing a few more of them. But obviously up here, we get the Greater Western Sydney games live, and we get the Sydney games live. Yep. So when Melbourne are playing either of them two, we usually get that live feed. So I sort of make time to make sure that I catch them games. I had a fair bit of interest in the West Coast, believe it or not, when Glenn was still playing and I was retired. And I still kept a pretty keen eye on Glenn to see how he was going. And, I basically like any other punter out there that enjoys their footy, try and keep an eye on it and watch what's going on. And, and a special eye on especially on Melbourne. And I can see some real good things happening. I just hope that they can keep this route. I'm super impressed with the reigning BNF Clayton Oliver. I could see great things in him before he even started doing great things, And
is that because of
Hagan.
Is that because of the number that Clayton Oliver was?
It might have been the first thing that sort of sprung to my attention, but no, believe me, what he can do with the ball and the way he rebounds and just his evasiveness, a great player. He's going to be a real Melbourne great. I think
he's a special kid, isn't he?
He's very special, he is, and we spoke about young Jesse there before. He's a great forward. Big Maxi Gawn, I love watching him play.
Yeah.
He was crawled by injury last year. Viney, well, we know about him, and he comes from some great stock.
Yeah.
Jones has been a great player in good and bad times there. I don't mind young Garlett too. He's not a bad forward. I think he needs to be... he needs to be sort of looked after. I don't know. I think there's got to be some good people in his ear to really... I can see him in his shell a little bit, Yeah. I want to see him sort of jump out of that and sort of, let his talent do the talking and sort of bust out. And I'm waiting for him to really bust out. I like Patrika. He's another solid player. And I think you can really build a great group around these blokes. I just don't know the way they trade these days, and players wanting to go home, and there's a lot of money involved these days too, which is always going to be harder to keep a group together, like Adelaide have probably just experienced now with their latest defect there. So the game's got really complicated. It's really, this free trade's going to be really massive, I think, with what we saw with Dusty Martin go through.
Yeah.
And what a special year he had this year. God, just incredible. And the amount of pressure that the young kid must have been under. Well, he's not young anymore, but, he took it all on. He took on everyone this year and just beat everything and everybody. And, walked away with a swag, deservedly a swag of awards. He was great.
The buzzword of this trade period was that whole go-home factor. You, coming from interstate, sort of experienced that. Was that ever a factor for you? Was the pull to go home ever something for you, or you were sort of, because you're more mature, I guess, when you started?
Oh, but you could say, where was me home? I left pretty young and went to South Australia. I played up in Darwin, and I loved that travel. I was a bit like that song, wherever I laid me hat, that was me home, sort of, So, home's always home, and your mum and your family and where you originate from. But, these days you can jump, even back in our day, you could jump on a plane. You usually had a few flights in your contract where you could get back and bring your mum over and things like that. So I think it's a bit of an excuse. And if you've really got it burning in your guts and you really want to play this great game, it doesn't matter where you go, you should just make the best of it. But then by the same token, Jace, you can't be dirty on someone who wants to go home, You can understand it. There's kids that probably grow up now in South Australia let's say, for instance, or Perth for that fact, and they probably dream of playing for the Eagles or they dream of playing for Fremantle, especially when that club's successful. I mean, Fremantle hasn't had much success, but you look at, West Coast has been a pretty successful club over the years. A lot of controversy there too, with some different things, but, and so, when a player misses out on being drafted by the team, there's not many players even in our day that played for a team that they barracked for, I mean, a few isolated ones there that were lucky enough probably to play for the club and play their whole life for that club and that club that they supported, someone like a Steve Silvani, if you like. Maybe there was a bit of father and son there or something like that. But, there's guys that come to the end of the road at a club and it's time to move on. And if you really want to play the game, I think you should, relish or jump at the chance. And, if you're a young kid, let's say you followed West Coast all your life and West Coast don't pick you up, well, if you still want to play and that fire's burning in your belly, it doesn't matter where you go. I'm pretty sure there's young kids out there that just really want to play and they've been in the system a long time and these academies and things like that. And, as opposed to playing in the VFL, or you get picked up, pick 79 or 80 in the draft and you go to Brisbane and they might be on the bottom of the ladder, well, there's an opportunity for you, and why wouldn't you grab it with both hands and run with it? So I think, there's a few pull that excuse, and I think there's a few coaches that are starting to show a bit of disdain towards that. But, the game's got pretty complicated now, and there's a lot of money involved, and,
we spoke earlier about some of that you played in an era where some of the game's greatest forwards played, Ablett, Lockett, Carey, Dunstall. How does Buddy Franklin compare to those guys, do you reckon?
Oh, right up there. Just, there's no telling what Buddy could do. Another 4 or 5 years he could be given Plugger Lockett's record a shake. And if you had thrown him into our day, I reckon he would have been, he probably would have had more shots at goal. He would have been more focal and played more as a true full forward, if you like. And he would have kicked 1,000 goals, no doubt at all. He would have been up there with Dunstall and Lockett. I've got no delusions about that, that's for sure. And I don't know, I think the game this day demands that there's that much run and it's that quick. I can't believe some of the handballs, like they're in a phone box, and just pumping out handballs. And you look at someone like Buddy that can go up and he could play a game on the wing, and that's unheard of. I don't think you'd ever imagine Plugger or Dunstall playing on a wing, Whereas Buddy, he's that mobile that, he would have tore it apart in our day, just like he's doing today. And these days, you haven't really got a real focal point. You've got on ballers that are kicking goals. You've got small forwards that are kicking goals, and they're all popping up, and you see the goals are shared. Now, when you have a look at the results after a game, you'll see a lot of players with 2 goals, 1 goal. You might have 11 or 12 different goal kickers for the day in that one team, and you didn't see that much in our day. Buddy would have torn it up. It's just great to watch him. I love watching him. And that big raking left foot of his. Yeah. Just entertainment plus, absolutely. And, he just seems to get stronger and stronger every year. Great to watch him. Love watching Buddy.
How do you think you would adapt to the modern game, the way you played? So how do you think you'd go? if you're playing today?
Yeah, I'd like to think that, with a fit body, being sort of 23 years of age like I once was, I think I was quick enough to play this game. I think I'd have to have a little bit more endurance, and I think the pre-seasons would be a bit more trickier as far as, you'd have to be a lot more mobile, and, that's what they demand of players these days, that you can, run up and play on the half-back line or go up and chase a kick up on the wing like your buddy does. The game these days, you can't just be a backman or a forward. I think you've got to have that mobility. You've got to be a utility. Like when we played, there were only probably about 3 or 4 utilities in a team. These days, you'll find 90% of the team can be called on to play anywhere. So the game has got that quick, and there's that much run involved now. But but I think ask anyone that retired that played a bit yesteryear, and I think that will say, you'd be confident that you could compete, especially if you played at the top level back, yesteryear. You'd like to think that you could. Wouldn't it be great to be 25 again?
Yeah, certainly.
What about the off-field aspects of it? I know you're obviously not in Melbourne or Victoria, so you're sort of removed perhaps from the fishbowl aspect of it, but there's intense 24-hour scrutiny of players in the media these days, and every action is examined under an incredible microscope. What are your thoughts on that? You talked about the media before. It's a hell of a lot worse these days than it was back then.
Yeah, media on steroids now.
Yeah, the media on steroids, that's for sure. You've got so many different components now in the media, and you're 360 and before the bounce and after the bounce and over the fence and in the grandstand.
Social media.
All these different shows and TV channels that are dedicated to a football club. Just like over in England now, you've got Liverpool TV and Man U TV. And I think we're sort of going down that road too. But, you see a lot of guys and you shake your head when you think, they get in trouble on social media. I think if I was playing today, I'd have the same attitude towards social media as I've got now, where it's non-existent and I have nothing to do with it. And there are a lot of keyboard warriors out there that... upset a lot of people, and it's quite a big thing in society. I've got young girls growing up now, and I don't really want them playing, being involved in that sort of stuff. You see young girls committing suicide and things like that because, they haven't got the right look or they've been taunted on social media. Yeah. So I think it's a real... I think it's quite a problem. But when you see a player get in trouble and you think, well, when I went out in Melbourne, I didn't get into trouble at all. It doesn't mean I wasn't a scallywag here and there, but, I didn't do anything bad. But, I used to love getting away and escaping to the lawn and down the Bells Beach and things like that, and just getting out of the Melbourne CBD. But you've just got to be mindful that everyone now has got a camera in their pocket, and a flick of a switch, and all of a sudden, taking a photo of you and things like that. But in some way, that can be a good thing too, or it can be a deterrent as far as doing some stupid things with girls involved and things like that. It's really exposed everything and everybody now, and it's just made that fishbowl sort of a little bit more clearer, if you like. But and I remember saying to you before, Andrew, with that social media, I can sit back now and say, well, I'd have nothing to do with it if if that was back in my day, like I've got nothing to do with it now. But it's a bit different when 13, 12-year-olds are on Twitter and things like that, and they're sort of bought up with it. So everyone's got an account and everyone throws their 2 bobs worth in. And but, as soon as someone falls into trouble, as soon as it bites them on the arse, all of a sudden they shut all their accounts down. So, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, if you like. They can be handy in some aspects with keeping in touch with people that travel overseas and things like that. Facebook, which I'm not a part of any of that, but I can see some of the positives of that. But again, on the flip side, you just got to be careful what you say and what you do. It's as simple as that. And I mean, back in our day, it was the same thing. You had to be mindful of what you were doing. A lot of coaches used to say nothing good happens after midnight, but I had a lot of good things happen to me at 2 or 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's for sure. But you've just got to pick your times and be smart about it, and don't go doing anything that's going to bring yourself down or the club down, and grab someone inappropriately or respect women, that sort of stuff. And you've got no problems, I reckon.
Yeah, that's good advice. Alan, I really want to thank you for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute great pleasure to talk to you, to find out what you've been up to reminisce about the old days. They were some of my favourite moments of supporting this footy club. And, you were a great part of that, sort of my teenage years of watching the D's play. And you were an absolute pleasure to watch. And I hope you can understand the love that is out there for you. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Yeah, you've been very generous with your time, so I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, the pleasure's been all mine, Andrew and Jason. I'm a big big fan of your little show that you've got running there. I'm sure you're going to go to bigger and better things if you're not already sitting on that now. But it's been a great pleasure to talk to you and reminisce. And I just want to say hello to all those great Melbourne fans out there. Let's hope that we can have a little bit of success in the not-too-distant future, or we want it straight away, don't we?
Oh, yeah.
We do.
Bugger the distant future.
Yeah.
I didn't really like Richmond too much, even though I was a little bit on their bandwagon towards the finals there, but when I think back about the Richmond, I used to hate them, and I think we should get back to hating them. And we want to see the red and blue army out there cheering in that last day of September, and I think that'll make us all happy. But it's been great to reminisce.
Would you come home for a granny? Would you come home and watch the boys if they made the big dance?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd have to pull a few tricks and try and get a ticket there, but I'm sure I could get one if I tried hard enough, and it'd be great to sit there and watch the boys doing a lap of honour holding that cup. I think we'd all have a tear in our eye. It's been a long time, over 50 years now, and I think anyone that ever pulled on the great red and blue jersey, the first footy jumper that was ever invented, if you like,
Yeah.
And to see them running around that cup, I think we'd all have a tear in our eye, and I just wish them all the best, this particular group, and I hope they can just sustain, they can build something and start some sort of dynasty, because I really do believe that it's not far away with the current crop of players that we're witnessing right now. That's for sure.
Amen to that.
Yeah, definitely. Alan, thank you once again. Very generous with your time. And
cheers, boys. Cheers, boys. As I said, it was great talking to you, and I wish we can do it again during the year, and especially if the D's are up and about, eh?
Well, would love to have you
take
back.
you up on that offer, yeah.
We would love to have you back, and you're always welcome.
Any time at all, boys. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I really do love and feel your passion for the footy club, and I hope it continues. And you're doing great work, and I hope you keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alan.
Thanks, boys. Good night. Great talking to you, and talk again.
Good talking to you too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Wow. Wasn't that?
Wow, indeed.
I can't believe that that just happened.
I hope you've recorded it just to be sure that it did happen.
Oh, was I meant to record it? Oh my goodness! Incredible. To go 2 hours with, someone who, I mean, I know for myself and I know for you, was a big part of our teenage years. I had that guy's name on my pencil cases, on my books at school. I'm sure you did too. But his name on my locker or something. I had posters up on the wall to just speak to him and, hear what, I'm speechless.
I thought his answers were superb. I mean, we didn't have to do anything. You and I hardly spoke at all because his answers were so considered and expansive and thoughtful. And he's obviously got, he joked that he hadn't read many books growing up and didn't do too well at school, but he's certainly got a great mind for the game. It was that was great. I just couldn't have gone. Couldn't have been more enlightening than it was.
Yeah, and how was his memory of all the games that he played and just little things that happened within games? I mean, I can't remember things I did last week, and he had such great knowledge and insight into how he, what happened, 20 plus years ago.
Look, we know some of those things inside out because we've watched them, the replay of them hundreds of times. But yeah, he's obviously still remembers most of it very vividly because, as you said, there was sort of quite a lot of detail there. But it's funny, he sort of shattered some myths, the talking over the fence to the girlfriend.
Yep.
But he added to others. That whole story about the exorcist. That
was incredible.
Adding, as you said, a new dimension to the kissing of Glenn. So, and look, it was great that he confirmed others, such as the Puma story too. There were different versions of that story going around. I think we'd heard that he was selling the gear at the market.
Yep.
But there was also the story that he was giving it away in hospital, and obviously that turned out to be the case. So, what a great guy, champion footballer, and great interview too.
Yeah, absolutely, and I like the fact that he left the door opened for a return, and you know what, I'll take him up on that at some point down the track. There's probably other things that would love to hear about, and it's great to see that he's still a demon as well. At heart. And I love the Clayton Oliver number 13 connection. That was great to hear as well.
Yep, and you can obviously see how good a kid Clary is. And it's great to hear that he's obviously still paying attention and still following the boys. I thought it was. I hadn't heard the story. I didn't know that his father had passed away so young.
Yep.
Alan, was so young. So, to hear that the message, I suppose, that he had for Jesse too was, was also sort of quite Quite interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah, someone mentioned in the chat room that perhaps the club should try and get him down to be a mentor to Jesse. And after hearing him talk, I'd love him to come back in some capacity because he's got a lot of knowledge that he could probably impart on the current crop of players. I might just mention quickly, if you do want to call, I'll put the phone lines open now. If you want to give us a call and give your thoughts and say whatever you want about the interview that just happened, 039016 3666. That's 039016 3666 or Demonland31 on Skype. We'll probably just be here for another couple of minutes and just be debriefing what just happened.
It's interesting what you said about Jesse, because I was watching some Jesse highlights the other day, and there's a goal that he kicked against Carlton the second time around where the ball was in the air, and as he sort of began jostling for the mark, he then turned his body around. The ball bounced and he was able to evade two opponents and snap a goal. And it was very Jakovich-like. Remember, he used to be able to do that? He'd sort of fly for the mark, and then mid-air he'd sort of turn and scoot around, and leaving his opponent sort of going the wrong way. And he was so quick to turn. And it was hard not to relive some of those magic moments while he was taking us through them.
Yeah, well, I mentioned to him that I put up today or yesterday onto Facebook. I cut down all the goals and behinds that he kicked in that North Melbourne game, the 11-9 one on the full, and what you just mentioned then about him being able to get the ball and sort of turn and how quick he was. It did that a couple of times in that game, and it was just so great to watch. I don't have higher praise for the guy.
Some of the old Jacko was still there, wasn't it? Like when he said, "Don't take this the wrong way," but I kick goals on all of them.
I love that.
That's very much the Jacko of old.
Yeah.
So, considered and thoughtful on the one hand, but still a bit of the old flair on the other.
There was also the bit about he would give off a goal to someone else, but he'd always make sure he got it back at some point or let them know that they owe him one. And I just love that about him. And another quote that I liked of his is that you don't kick goals with handballs.
Yes, that's right.
That was a nice one.
Wow, I can't believe we just spoke to Allen Jakovich for 2 hours.
I know. It's, when I posted...
it was worth a wait.
Yeah, absolutely. When I posted on social media that we were going to be interviewing with him, it brought people out of the woodwork. He's got a lot of fans, and, I asked him in the interview, you must realise that there's a lot of people that... he probably doesn't want to hear it, but there's a lot of people that sort of worship him, and I don't know if that's because he spent so much time out of the limelight since he's retired, which is, his prerogative. He has the right to sort of fade into the background, but also because of the impact that he left on the game, in such a short time. Those, you said it during the interview, he kicked bags of 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, it doesn't happen anymore. So we've got this sort of seared into our memory from the past. And, of course, we're going to sort of revere him because of that, because, one, we've been starved starved of success, and just having that memory of how great he was.
Yeah, just reading some of the comments back in the thread that you created promoting it, and agree with what Small But Forward has said about being completely hung up on his fantasy forward line of Jakovich, the Wiz, Nita, Ox, Lyon, and Andrew Obst on the other flank. Wow. Imagine Imagine the Wiz and Jacko together, huh?
Oh yeah, that I when he was talking about that, I was just absolutely.
Everyone was drooling, surely.
Yeah. It's and he talked. I'm watching the replay of that North Melbourne game. We really did have some fantastic player, and he mentioned it. Andrew Ops was just a fantastic player, also cut down by injury, and sort of had a much shorter career. Dyson was in that game as well. He was a great footballer. We had some great names about in those days, and it's a shame. We couldn't get a premiership in those years. It's we certainly had the talent.
Well, as he said, injury.
Yeah.
Most of those guys, apart from Nita, as he said, had just kept getting injured. So it wasn't to be, unfortunately. But a lot of wonderful highlights from those 3 years at the club.
If someone does want to give us a call, we'll keep the lines open for another couple of minutes. If you want to weigh in, a lot of people are weighing in on the thread we've got on Demonland. 0390163666. That's 0390163666, or Skype us Demonland31. We'd love to hear from you. It's.
A lot of people sort of saying that they're surprised at how articulate and thoughtful he was and considered in his answers, and I've got to agree. It's just blown away. Obviously a great thinker about the game too.
Yep, and we do have a caller on the line. Welcome to the Allen Jakovich special Demonland podcast. Who are we talking to?
Oh. You'd be talking to Colin Beasley-Bear again.
Colin, how you going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Well done with the interview. It was definitely worth the wait.
Yeah, wasn't it? What were your expectations, and were they met?
Well, I made a bit of a facetious comment in the chat room that if it was a Demonlander coming on with a crap impersonation of Allen Jakovich, I'd be highly aggrieved. But as I said, it was a rather facetious comment, but definitely it actually hit a lot of the bases that I was actually hoping it'd hit.
Yep.
In that, as you said before, that he basically was able to remember a lot of what actually happened in all the games he played in. I guess, look, he didn't have as long a career as others, but, to remember back, how many odd years would that be now? 26 years?
Yeah.
To remember it in that kind of detail is just absolutely fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
He was really articulate too, wasn't he?
Yeah, definitely, no doubt about it. But there was one thing that I was if you ever do get him back on again, you might want to quiz him about a story that Gary Lyon had in his autobiography, in that they went up to Inverloch, apparently, I think it was 26 odd years ago, and Jacker had gone, he disappeared each and every night, and it came down to New Year's Eve, I think, one night, and Gary and Rod Grinter were up at Inverloch, and Gary decided to go down to the pub, and he'd actually found out Jacker had been going down to the pub every night and actually singing with the band at the pub. And it might be worth checking that story out. I thought that was it's humorous. I thought kind of
I actually was going to ask him. I had a lot of things that we wanted to ask him that we didn't get to, and hopefully we will. But I did want to ask him about his singing, because if you recall the footy shows back in those days, he used to get on there and do a bit of the Doors covers of some Doors songs. So maybe we could have got him on to sing something for us, perhaps a new rendition of our Come On Demons theme song.
I was going to say, they kind of mangled that one many years ago. So, I was going to say, you definitely would need, if you had someone with Jacker's voice, I'd say you probably would give it justice, no doubt about that.
Yeah, but that was just amazing. I'd love to get him back to the club. Obviously, he's happy with his retirement and, sort of fading into the background. But, he's, it
wouldn't be... I don't know. The one thing I was interested in is, how did he actually get up to the Philippines? one thing, because people was like, I guess people kind of made the assumption he was actually living in the Philippines.
No.
Because there was a thread on the Demon Land where there was a grand final function in Manila, him and Pikey, and there was photos of him, and I guess, considering there's been a scarcity of information, people just kind of assumed that he might have been living up there. But how did he actually end up there?
I thought the same thing when I saw that. I thought perhaps he's living in the Philippines, but no, it's just like he was invited by the group that was putting it on. I don't know too much about it, and then I guess it was like any sort of speaking gig that you get. He got invited. I think he's still mates with Pikey, or they keep in touch as sort of ex teammates might do. And yeah, I guess it was good. I don't know the ins and outs of whether it was a paying gig or not, or whether they paid for flights or accommodation. And no, I'm not privy to any of that, but I'm sure there was some arrangement made. And but yeah, I guess it was like any paid corporate gig. And if they're going to pay you or fly you up there, you're not going to say no for a holiday for a week.
No doubt about it. I was going to say, well, who do you think you should get up next? Because there'd be I think someone was saying in the chat forum that Mike Sheehan's been chasing him for 10 years, though by the sounds of it, I don't think he'd be too keen actually to go on open mic if you actually heard a few of his comments about Mike. But that being said, who should you should be chasing up next to do interviews with, I should say.
Well, I think that's the holy grail. I think we're retiring after tonight.
Exactly.
This was the last
podcast. This is it. We're coming down from the mountain now.
So I don't know. I've there's a lot of ex-players on social media, and it's good to have a bit of a mix between the current crop of players and reminiscing with the old crop. And there's quite a few of the old crop on social media, so I'm going to sort of reach out to a couple of them. I know there's a few other Demons podcasts that have had guys that I'm sure they've asked on social media to come on, and I'm perhaps there's a couple of them that I'd like to get. But then there's guys like I'd love to get David Schwartz, but I reckon he'd be hard to get because of his his commitments in media. Gary Lyon would be great to get on. I don't think he'd probably come on a little old podcast like ours. I don't know. There's
and it's not just players we're after. We had Sophie Gaylor from the cheer squad on obviously one week, and Titus O'Reilly came on another week. So we're also looking for guests, who are perhaps not so obvious in terms of, or in the way that the players are, I guess.
Yeah.
I'll tell you who you should think of, and it's just popped into my head, Steve O'Dwyer, as far as, cult figures. I've always wondered what happened at the Big Strawberry, and I don't know what's happened to him.
Yeah, look, and I was just about to say, but how would you find him? But then again, we just interviewed Allen Jakovich, so anything's possible.
Yeah, I guess that's very true. But I know I get the feeling that he actually might still be in Melbourne. I think I've heard somewhere that he's still getting around the traps. But I think as far as cult figures, he'd be a bit of a get.
Well, I can hear someone typing. I think that's you, Grapevine. He furiously typing, "Where is Steve O'Dwyer?"
Well, if anyone can find him, I'd say that's going to be. Nash has just said get Sweeper Northey, but I do know that Sweeper Northey's still around Ballarat. Last thing I heard, because I'm originally from Ballarat, I'm in Japan now, but he was coaching Learmont not long ago. So he's still getting around there, and I actually saw him on the train actually going back to Ballarat from a Melbourne game.
Yeah, I would. I would doubt I'd love to speak to him, no doubt. I doubt though that he's on social media, and that's for guys like us, that's sort of our only point of contact. To get some of these guys.
I'll cut in here.
Yeah,
if you go, he's got a website. I think it's called Swooper Coaching or something like that. He runs his own website where he puts out videos about coaching and what have you. I'd say that'd be your best bet if you wanted to get in touch with Sweeper Northey.
Well, I was going to, sweepercoach.com.au.
Yeah, I that's not the exact URL, but I've seen his website, and he puts out videos about coaching and stuff like that, and drills and how to motivate players. if it's a website, he would have had an email address attached to that. So I'd say have a look there.
Yeah, well, I'm on it. I'm onto it.
Yeah,
Okay,
Chaser
well,
J is saying that now that Jeff Farmer's back in Melbourne, he's another one that's obviously somewhere near the top of the list to talk to the Wiz. Saw him at the football late in the season too. And look, we should just address one thing. Andy Nash has posted that was congratulated us on this work and says he won't even begrudge the snub this week. Not snubbed at all, Nasher. Just would have been too difficult with three people asking the questions, given that he was already mixing up the two of us.
I was Jace for most of the interview, so you're getting all the credit for my fantastic questions.
Yes.
So, but we'll let that one slide. But Nasha, no, this sort of all came about very, very quickly as well. So, it sort of all happened very, very quickly. So I apologise for that, and please accept our apologies. And if you would like to join us, we're going to be back. We'll discuss the trades and all that. Trade week on Wednesday next week. So please, Nasha, accept our apology.
Fellas, I better get going nonetheless because my wife just looked in the door. She heard me speaking English, and usually that's a sign of something strange in her eyes. So I better leave it there. But anyway, congratulations on the interview. You did a fantastic job.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Cheers.
Hey, good on you, fellas. Night.
Right. Good on you. See ya.
All right.
Well, it's a big night, wasn't it?
It was huge. If anyone does want to jump in and call us, we'll probably just take one more, 039016 3666 or Demonland 31. But do you
know what? You know what else I loved, and I didn't know, that fist pump that he used to do. He used to hold one hand like that, and then with his fist.
Yep. Oh yeah, I saw it every time he kicked a goal.
That he was sometimes indicating to Swooper.
Yes.
And sticking it right up him.
Yes, there was lots of things that I know what I liked. I really liked the story of the armband as well and the significance of that. I thought that was great. That because my memory of him is having that armband on quite a lot, and
yes, yep.
I liked how he said he would just tell people it was a made in Darwin or a made in Adelaide or Perth or something like that, but it was often just when he needed a bit of something extra, a bit of a reminder of his old man. I really like that story. It's sort of good to hear those stories. I mean, obviously not, it's the sadness connected with his father passing away when he was younger, but it's sort of nice to hear those down-to-earth, real relatable people moments in sport. So, yeah. And
as Demon Jack has just posted in the thread, one listener has already edited his Wikipedia page to mention that he's been on the Demonland podcast. So it's good to know that tonight's podcast has been entered into the official history of the universe.
Great.
As it is on Wikipedia.
Well, and it'd be I think it would be nice as well, and not just for Demonland, but for Jakovich as well, if some of the media outlets, and I know some of the boys from SEN were listening. I was sort of had an eye on a bit of the Twitter feed just to see what people were saying, and some of those guys were out there. So it'd be, feel free to take bits from this. Credit us though. That'd be nice. But it'd be good. I think it's nice, sort of that the stuff he said about Jesse, some of the stuff he said about the current day players as well. If the Melbourne Football Club jumps onto it, that would be great. It's always good to hear those stories of past players who have something positive to say about the footy club. And 039016 3666 or Demonland 31 on Skype. I don't think I'll be able to sleep tonight. That was a great interview, and what a great bloke. He's the type of guy you'd love to have a beer with, I think. That's now on my bucket list. I ticked off the interview part now. Now it's time to grab a beer with the great man.
Yeah. It's wouldn't have thought you'd get offered the chance to do that, would you?
Yeah, no. I didn't think we'd be interviewing him, and we did. So I guess it's you throw something out to the universe, and it comes back to you. So
we knew about the police escort, didn't we? I think we've heard that one before.
Yes.
Well, I think that's been mentioned. That seemed to sort of ring a bell when he was telling that one.
Yeah.
Getting the police escort out of Victoria Park, but I don't think we knew that he went in the back of the divvy and did a few laps of the ground. So, it was just funny to hear those kinds of stories, I suppose.
I think I'll be downloading, legally, of course, The Exorcist this week, and trying to track down a good copy of the game. What year was was after they won the premiership, West Coast? So I think it must have been 93. So we'll have to watch that one closely and see whether we can read the
and see Jimmy standing with his hands on his hips.
Yeah. He did a very good Irish accent as well. So that's another talent we uncovered tonight.
I don't think he disappointed, that's for sure. I think a lot of people have been waiting a long time to hear him speak, and I think he was great. He was every bit as good as he was on the field. So it was a delight to talk to him.
Absolutely, and once again, I'd like to just thank Allen for giving us the opportunity to speak to him. We were happy to provide a platform for him to do that, and I thank you to the football gods that made this all possible and happened. And what can I say? You don't often get to speak to your heroes, and he certainly was. I won't say a childhood because I was in my teenage years when he burst onto the scene. But yeah, he was a hero of mine, a hero of a lot of people, and there's a lot of love out there for him. And I'm happy that we could provide people with the forum to be able for them to hear what he had to say.
Yep. Be good to get him back on.
Yeah, well, he will definitely do that. Be good. And he did say he would be down here, or he tries hardest to get down here if we made the granny. So Jack is coming to town.
One more reason to get the boys to fire up.
Yeah. Well, be good to I hope he is here come September, last Saturday in September. Because that means we'll be in the granny. All right, thank you, Grapevine, for joining me. I apologise, Nasha, for not joining us, but we'll be back Wednesday night. I think we'll be back and we'll discuss, the madness there was trade week. We've got to discuss Jack Watts. Jake Lever, Jack Watts, Harley Ballick. Is it Ballick or Ballich? We'll find out next week. That's your
Stay tuned.
That's your homework for next week. All right, Allen Jakovich, thank you very, very much for the interview. Thank you everyone for listening, and Colin for calling in. We'll be back Wednesday next week. Demonland.com.